Good evening and welcome. Tonight is Monday, January 25th, 2021. It is 7 o'clock p.m. This is the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. This meeting is being conducted both in person and electronically. We will call the meeting to order and would all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone should have a copy of the agenda. Are there any changes, corrections to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Well, we'll move.
Ed will second.
Okay, Shannon 1, Ed 2, all in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next, we have the minutes from our January 11th, 2021 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 6 through 9. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? Seeing no one, is there a motion to approve?
Carrie Johnson so moves.
Ed will
Emily will
second.
second.
Okay, I heard Carrie 1 and Ed 2. All in favor of the minutes as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we'll address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item?
Mr. Mayor, it does look like we have one person calling in if they want to address the council. This is an appropriate
Okay.
time for, on either this or the next item.
All right. Caller 1 under CO, would you like to address the council on any agenda item? Hearing no response, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Caller CO, you don't have to identify yourself. I'm just going to ask again since you're the only visitor we have. All right, seeing no one. Go ahead.
This is Nathan. I'm just calling in, civil engineer in the Windsor Phase 4 plat. So
Okay.
just here for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 10 and concludes with the resolution on page 27 and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000. To Minnesota Paving for 1,450 tons of quarter-inch quartzite stone for $44,950. To Gopher Heating for Lennox two-stage furnace and a 5-ton air conditioning unit for $10,790, plus the regular schedule of disbursements for January 6, 2021 through January 20th, 2021. Are there any questions, comments concerning the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move, Mr. Mayor. Steve Grimes.
Emily will second.
All right, Steve 1, Emily 2. Any comments or questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, which there is none, so we will move to new business. And the first thing is the Windsor Pond 4th edition, the plats. And Russ.
Yeah, Mayor Zeman, members of the City Council, Mike Volk of Windsor Homes LLC has submitted the preliminary and final plat of Windsor Pond 4th edition for your consideration. There obviously had been three previous editions completed, the first two by Valley View Land Company, who then sold the undeveloped portion of the property to Windsor Homes LLC. This is the typical slab-on-grade patio home project. It's been very popular and it's very predictable. Private covenants then have been adopted, and there are associations that have been formed. You'll have in front of you the preliminary plat and the final plat, as well as a development agreement by and between the City of St. Peter and Windsor Homes LLC. I will note that the subdivision is zoned R2 for 1 and 2 family residential. The plats create an additional 12 lots for development. Mr. Volk would like to have an inventory for development for next year and for the coming years. It provides for the extension of Windsor Lane towards the south, and then the completion of Victoria Street, which then will combine with Victoria Street that is now installed east of Churchill Court, the cul-de-sac in the development. The future platting of Outlot A on the southwest part of the development is anticipated in the future. All of the lots that are proposed meet the requirements of the subdivision ordinance as well as the zoning ordinance as to minimum size, minimum frontage, and such. Public Works has reviewed the Exhibit B improvements, which are shown at the as Exhibit B in the development agreement to meet the utility standards and the roadway standards. At the Planning Commission, I noted that on their copy of the preliminary plat, or the plat, it showed that there had been a 5-foot side yard easement provided. You will note on the final plat that that has been corrected to 6 feet. However, subsequent to the distribution of the agenda, Jeff Knutson at Public Works has identified some very, very minor details of the Exhibit B improvements, and I believe mostly involving the cross sections of the streets. That would need to have some slight alteration to meet our standards and the standard utility plates that the City Council has adopted in the future, or in the past. The ponding for the development, the regional pond will be developed on the 40 acres at the intersection of Traverse Road and Sunrise Drive. At this time, there is a small pond that's provided in the very northwest corner of that property. It is anticipated that as the area further develops, Windsor Pond and that 40 acres, that it would be anticipated that there would be a larger regional pond constructed at that location. As such, Windsor Pond has been prepaying their future assessment for that regional stormwater. And so the development agreement in front of you then would have Windsor Homes paying $8,974.84 as their regional stormwater assessment. And as future portions of Outlot A would be developed, additional regional stormwater assessments to the tune of $1,946.82 per acre will be incurred. The parkland dedication is based on 12% of the net developable acreage. As such, a parkland dedication of $8,073.80 will be paid by Windsor Homes as the plats are approved. Also then, legal fees capped at $1,000 will be paid by Windsor Homes for City Attorney Brandt's review and approval of the documents involved. The development agreement then does cause for completion of the improvements by October 31 of 2021. I will note the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the matter at their most recent January meeting. There were no members of the public that appeared to address the Planning Commission regarding the plats, and the Planning Commission has recommended, Mr. Mayor and Council, that you accept the preliminary plat, that you accept the final plat, and then that you authorize City Administrator Prafke and Mayor Zeman to execute the development agreement on behalf of the city. I'd answer any questions that you or members of the council may have, Mayor.
Okay. Questions for Russ on either of these? Carrie?
Russ can go ahead first.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Russ. I had a question on when I'm looking at the map, and I apologize if this is a dumb question, but why is lot number 6 in the zone that's marked 1 so large?
Yes, I did mention that to the Planning Commission, and I should have had that in my notes, but that's a very good question. Originally, Lot 7 was going to be oversized, and that is at the request of someone that's pre-bought the lot. Someone that's expressed that they will buy the lot once it's platted, and they wanted an exceptionally large lot. There is at least one other instance within Windsor Pond where the interior lot lines, or excuse me, the interior easements have been vacated to allow 2 lots to be developed in concert as one. So it was by the request of a buyer that I believe is already prearranged.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. I really like this neighborhood a lot. It's good to see development happening. More development. Thank you.
Anyone else? Steve?
It's really not a question, but I just want to say, I looked at buying one of those houses initially when I moved to St. Peter, and they are really nice homes. They truly are. So if people ever ask you what they're like, they are really well laid out, and they're really nice. They would really make excellent homes. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor, about that.
All right. Anyone else? Russ?
Mr. Mayor, I should note, and I noted the planning commission, that on the preliminary plat, you can see the temporary cul-de-sac that was constructed at the edge of Windsor Lane. That is not required, given that Windsor Lane now would have an intersection with Victoria Street. And I also will note in the development agreement on page 32, the date January 11 should be changed to January 25 to reflect tonight's meeting.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions? Russ, I have a question as far as density. You know, we talked with previous councils, especially when Mr. Kwame was around, about the density and how that affects us growth-wise. And then you have something like what Carrie just brought up, the combination of the two lots. Do you take that into account whenever there's a request for a plat like this?
The city hasn't necessarily adopted any density guidelines. We've adopted minimum lot guidelines.
Right.
And so the minimum, I believe, is 6,000 square feet. We have not adopted a requirement that they have a maximum. So I believe the intent of the neighborhood still can be met, and it certainly is a dense development as it exists, and the property value per net acre is one of the highest of all the neighborhoods that we've ever analyzed. So it's a very good return for the city of St. Peter. But the combination of two lots to create one, I think is somewhat negligible in the whole scheme of the development of the community.
Right. And I agree. I was just wondering if you took that into account at all when that was in that process, and that answers my question. Thank you. Yeah, these, I saw there's one under construction I saw yesterday when I was looking online, and it was, $315,000. They are doing well. I'm not sure all the amenities that were included, but it was 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and 1,700 square feet. So they have used the market very, very well. Any other questions? If not, the resolution accepting the preliminary plat of Windsor Pond 4th edition appears on page 66. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Ed 1, Carrie 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have on page 67, the resolution accepting the final plat of Windsor Pond 4th edition and authorizing execution of the development agreement. Is there a motion for approval?
Emily will so move. Noel will second.
All right, any questions on this one? Emily 1, Shannon 2. I'm sorry, Barb. If no other questions, call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams, Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the Soil Water Conservation District Grant Match. Pete.
Mayor Zeman and City Council, before you, you have information related to a grant application that was completed by Nicollet Soil and Water Conservation District. As you may remember, last year we applied for the same grant. We had about double the scope of what we have this year. We were not successful in getting that grant. We went back and refined and focused our efforts on some of the areas where we could line up with Nicollet County local water plan. And those would include stormwater control in the western agricultural area, rural resource management, watershed restoration, groundwater protection, and drainage coordination. So what we're really working with is a couple of drainage ditches that come from the west, bring agricultural runoff from farms and from fields, bring that water down to the sand plains of western St. Peter, where it drains into the ground, into our Jordan aquifer, and has an impact on our drinking water quality. Our overall goal is to reduce the quantity of water that comes in and improve the quality that we receive. The grant is broken down in about 5-6 main areas. So some of the activities that we're looking at doing here would be to implement a cover crop rotation. We'll be looking to sign up some farmers that are interested in receiving some funds over a 3-year window where they would plant cover crops and try to keep the soil in the fields. We'd be working with nutrient management. We'd be roughly looking at nutrient applications in the spring to try to reduce the amount of nutrients that are in the runoff water. We'd be looking at structural practices. One of the larger implements that we want to do is improve sediment basins out there, correct some drop pipes that are drainage structures from those sediment basins, and then improve intakes from farm fields to reduce phosphorus and some of the loading that we would receive out there. One of the other areas would be nutrient management. We're going to work with some farmers to develop a couple of plans where they can take and have an agronomist work with them on nutrient management, when to apply, how to apply, what the best result would be that helps them improve their productivity. Then we'd also be looking at drainage water management. We'd be working with the farmers on the field intake portion of that, trying to improve how the water leaves the field, the stuff that does. And we'd have quite a bit of assistance tied up with engineering and technical assistance. So we've got to do a little bit of design and evaluation of what's going on out there to make the best coordination of the activities that we have planned. We also will have community outreach. We're looking at having some outreach meetings that showcase and discuss the practices that we're trying to do with some of the overall goals that we have out there. Before you on page 70, I have asked that you authorize the mayor and city administrator to work with me to get the grant applied for, and that you authorize them to enter into an agreement to work with Nicollet Soil and Water Conservation District and allow staff to participate. I'm available for questions if you have any.
All right, questions? Carrie.
Hi, Pete. I was looking again at the fiscal impact and had some questions. So I'm understanding that the fiscal impact is $31,620. It's hard to determine what the return on investment is at this time, and that discussion happened at the workshop last week. Then I was looking at the in-kind services that we may receive perhaps from Nicollet County, and I'm just wondering how that would work. So I'm a part of the liaison meetings with the county, but I just wanted to ask again, so do we request the in-kind services that we need and they may or may not approve it, or do they offer that? So that's my first question. And then what if last week we mentioned that we may use some of their equipment, would that also include labor potentially? Would we ask for that?
Right. We have an option for we'll sit down with the staff from the Soil and Water Conservation District and talk about how we can implement these activities. We do need to guarantee that we pay up front. So what we would do is probably contribute a resource of blank dollars to the project up front. And then if we participate, we would get some of those funds back. And so really it's going to be a cash out of hand up front. And then if we have time and effort and expertise, we can participate on different levels and try to bring some of that money back.
Mr. Mayor, if I can. Councilmember Johnson, to answer your question, we are not, nor can we guarantee that the county will participate. In fact, we are very unsure whether they will participate either in cash or in-kind services. But we will be making that offer. And so as you are aware, with Nicollet County Commissioners, we've talked about the opportunity for this. And people communicate with Seth, the county engineer, to make sure that there's a more detailed discussion as Pete and the Soil and Water Conservation Group do their work relative to specific scoping. And by that I mean specific activities. We might need 50 hours of skid steer work or whatever it might be. As that gets more clearly defined, that'll be part of the offer to the county for their participation.
So it really be at those meetings where the need would be determined?
I would prefer to think of it as not being necessarily the need, but the offer to the county to participate. One way or another, we'll cover that work that needs to be done, either as a part of our cash and the grant that Soil and Water Conservation has, that we've gotten in partnership, or resources, in-kind resources that we or they provide.
I see. Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Pete, looking through this resolution, and it has here supports cover crop, nutrient management programs, water retention, sediment control basins. Aren't there other like farm service agency groups, agencies from even the federal government that get involved in this? It's obviously known that this is a problem.
Yeah, it's St. Peter's not unique to a lot of areas within the state where drinking water is being jeopardized because of agricultural practices. Lighter soil contributes to that. It's not anything that a farmer is doing wrong. It's more or less the soil that they're given to work with and the drainage areas that they're serving. So what we're trying to do is find a resolution for the agricultural community in situations like ours that can be used throughout the state. And so what better area than where we are? We already have a reverse osmosis system. So if we have something that goes on out in the western area there, we can keep working to fine tune those practices. A lot of other communities don't have that opportunity right now. We've already made the commitment and well on our way. What we can do then is reduce our cost of operation once that is found, or if we find something that we can implement.
I guess that's really not my question. Maybe I wasn't clear enough again tonight. But I grew up on a farm, and there was always seemed to be federal government programs for, way back when, soil bank, and all this kind of stuff. And it was because of, maybe it didn't run into a city water supply, but other areas. And that's been 60 years ago. And I'm just kind of curious why this is kind of different and why there aren't people from even our legislature or from the federal level that are more involved in this and something like this.
Right.
I know you don't probably have the answer, but I'm just kind of curious where it stops and starts.
Yeah, we do have federal, not only the Minnesota Department of Ag is participating with us right now to do sampling and analysis on the drainage ditches out west. So the federal level is working from that point, and there are 5 areas within the state that have been identified as drinking water supply management areas that are being jeopardized by the agricultural community, and St. Peter is one of those. And so having a grant like this to see what practices can be used will also assist on the federal level.
Right. Yeah, it's a grant, but we aren't guaranteed of the grant.
Result. Right.
Well, in this instance, the reason we're signing the agreement, Mayor and members, is that we've applied for the grant and we have
Right.
been awarded the grant. And so to receive the grant in this instance, Soil and Water Conservation has to do their work, and the resources that they've applied for need a cash match, and that's, or a in-kind match, and that's where we come in.
Yep. No, I understand. It just seems different to me from the way it should happen. Any other questions? If not, the resolution authorizing execution of grant agreement with Nicollet County Soil, Water, and Conservation District appears on page 70. Is there a motion for approval?
DeVos will move.
Steve Graham's the second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Brad, 1, Steve, 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the Nicollet County Library Services Agreement. Todd.
Mayor and members, this is something that you see on, well, an annual basis, and it's an agreement with Nicollet County where they provide resources to the city of St. Peter to provide library services, not only to the citizens of St. Peter, but other members of Nicollet County. Again, since we've processed this every year, you can see on page 71 and 72 the amount of money that Nicollet County has provided over those years. We actually had agreements of this nature, very similar, prior to 2011. So if you want to know more about that, please give me a ring, or I'd be happy to visit about that now if you have any questions. But this is a way that Nicollet County provides resources to the city of St. Peter for library services. The agreement starts on page 73 and runs through page 75, and is very, very similar to what you've seen over the last 9 or 10 years. The amount of money that they provide to us is $50,044. I will mention very specifically that number has not changed a lot. It changed in 2019 from $45,000 to $50,000. It's been the same for 19, 20, and now for 2021. As I articulate within the body of the memo, it's great that they provide these resources. They're required to levy a certain amount of money to provide library resources, and they really don't have any place else to go with those resources. But what they levy has not kept pace with the inflationary costs over the number of years that you see in the library, whether it's for employee wages or purchasing of books or processing of books through Traverse to Sioux library system. So I do want to point that out to you, but if you don't enter this agreement and you don't receive the money, you don't get that $50,000, and that puts a pretty big hole in your planned budget. So again, the information is provided in your packet, and the resolution providing approval of the contract is on page 76.
Okay. Questions or comments? Emily.
Yeah, thank you. Todd, a couple things. One, I'm just curious, I noticed at the beginning of this table, the 2011 amount is 49,000 and then it goes down for several years. Was there a specific reason that the funding was so drastically reduced? Well, it's not too drastic, but it's significant.
Yes, so that was right around the time that, as you may recall, there were some financial issues within the state of Minnesota and local units of government. At that time, the state legislature changed the rules on what's called minimum maintenance of effort. Now, those rules describe very clearly what counties and cities and others who provide library services must spend. And generally at that time, the rule was that you couldn't spend less than you spent last year. However, at this time, because of the financial and budgetary stress throughout the state of Minnesota, the state legislature changed the rules and allowed for a slight reduction to occur. And so Nicollet County followed suit and reduced the amount of money that they levied, and then the amount of money that they transferred to you. they do have a similar contract, and you'll see a similar table with North Mankato, because they do provide resources to North Mankato as well. And generally, they split those resources between the city of St. Peter and North Mankato equally, with the exception of rural service through what used to be called, and I think they still call, the bookmobile. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. And one other question for you, Todd. Is there any way that we can, petition them to increase the amount? Because you're indicating here that, the costs have stayed the same, and that may be a concern if it stays stagnant for a number of years.
Yes, petition, not so much, but certainly the budget is determined in Nicollet County by the Nicollet County Commissioners. And so I believe that the reason that you see a change from 2018 to 2019 is because there had been multiple discussions at city-county liaison meetings, because some council members and the mayor attended some meetings with Nicollet County to promote a change in those dollars. Well, they followed with that. They have resisted that more recently, but to be clear, I have worked cooperatively with the city administrator in North Mankato, and every year for the past 4 or 5 years, we have requested additional dollars. Typically, we send in that request in June and July when they're working on their budgets, just like you guys are, with our hopes of providing some rationale for an increase in that levy and then the resources flowing to you. Again, in 2018 or to 2019, there was some success in that, but recently we have not had success in that. I will also mention that at your liaison meetings, this is a topic of discussion. I hate to say at every meeting, because I didn't look at every meeting, but I think it's just about every meeting that we have with them, this is an item of discussion.
Back in 2018, the request from ourselves and from North Mankato was, correct me, Todd, if I'm wrong, was double this. The request was for $10,000, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's correct, sir.
And they came up with $5 million. Now, I think you're giving them a lot of credit by just going back those 3 years, but Emily pointed out back in 2011, well, that's a whopping increase over 9 years of $940 from 2011. Wow.
Well, prior to that, Mr. Mayor and members, as you may recall, with the breakup of the Minnesota River Valley Library System, we actually brokered services of North Mankato. And so our contract changed substantially from 10 to 11 in that we received more money, but it was then we transferred some of that money to North Mankato at that time because there was a challenge in getting those groups together to make sure those dollars could flow appropriately.
Right. But maybe it wasn't this last year because of COVID, but wasn't it the year before they had requested information as to how many people from out Nicollet County, from the townships, other municipalities within the county were using our services, our library services? Did we ever provide that to them?
So, Mr. Mayor, we do in the areas where we can provide that data. Has the services that we've provided have changed? There are some areas where we believe we see a considerable amount of use by the rural populations, but it is not able to be tracked. So let me give an example of that. Some of you might be familiar with Hoopla, which is an internet-based, a web-based system to be able to check out books, unlike your Kindle, or movies and other things. The software doesn't come with an ability to track where that is coming from, whether it's a rural resident or a city resident.
I see.
And so at some point, maybe that software will be developed in that way, but this is a software that's used nationwide. And actually, we had discussion with Hoopla and asked them to design that in, and they have said, well, you're kind of the only ones that are really looking for that. Maybe someday we'll do that. So we hope for someday, but we continue to provide other data that supports, again, real numbers related to rural patron usage.
Okay. All right. I think somebody else had their hand up. Steve Grams. There we are.
Emily, just to let you know, Carrie and I have the privilege and the honor of watching Todd Pratsky grovel every couple of months. So it's interesting to watch the guy plead and beg, but there is very little response. Usually the eyes start to flutter. So yeah, it's been a challenge. Believe me. Yeah.
Shannon?
Thanks for sharing that, Mr. Grams.
Oh,
Shannon?
you're welcome, Emily.
I mean, I'd like to recognize the increase that we received in 2019. That's commendable. I would be so disappointed to see another decade of stagnation like we had prior to 2019. From my perspective, there are few places that provide services like our library does to everyone across the spectrum of ages, from the very young family all the way to seniors. I formerly served on the library board, and so I'm really passionate about our library. We provide excellent service, excellent programming, and like I said, I'd be very disappointed to see another decade of stagnation. And I hope that maybe we can have some partnership.
Carrie?
What do we think the gap is between the inflation, what they're providing, and the inflation gap?
I would like to give you an exact answer on that, but I think it depends heavily on what your basis is. If your basis is the amount of change since 2011 or 2012, it's been very stagnant, and I think at a minimum, $10,000 to $15,000 would be keeping pace with the cost increases that we see. I think if you look at other data sets, you can interpret that utilization of rural residents has been stagnant in some areas. That might be driven as much by population decline in rural areas as it is utilization. And so one other consideration, I think, is that, again, Nicollet County does have an ability to levy more for these resources. And it is also true that the residents of St. Peter or North Mankato are Nicollet County residents as well. And so library services are core, some of the core services that we see within our community, and have really high value. And the cost for impact on the community is relatively low. So it's I like to think, a very wise investment on the county's part in their community as well. So.
Well, I think that's a good point, Todd. You know, I talked about the townships and the people in the rural areas, but the non-exempt properties in St. Peter and North Mankato, we're all contributing to Nicollet County's taxes. So, I mean, if they want to isolate them, why? Because it's we're giving them funds too, not just the people out in the rural areas.
I mean, Mr. Mayor and members, and I'm happy to continue answering questions, but at least from my perspective, we can continue to ask them for resources and try and demonstrate value. But frankly, if you don't take these dollars, you're going to have a big hole in your budget.
Right. And if we do, I don't want to, well, I do want to badmouth them for their actions, but they are required to give us an amount. And it doesn't seem to make any difference over the last 10 years that I've been involved in this. It doesn't make any difference if we say nice things about them or if we ridicule or whatever their actions that they have taken. So it's not a situation of that either.
I mean, you have expanded your service to make things more readily available to rural residents, without a doubt. The opportunity to serve or to gain service has grown substantially.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? The resolution authorizing execution of the library services contract appears on page 76. Is there a motion for approval?
Emily will so move.
Steve Grams will second, Mr. Mayor.
Emily 1, Steve 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson, Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Sorry, forgot my mic button. Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the city assistance request for the Special Olympics polar plunge. I see polar bear and I see polar. So we're going to go with polar only.
Mr. Mayor, members, the information starts on page 77, and you've seen this request or very similar request for the last, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 years, give or take a little bit. The amount of impact that we have on helping provide for this event is not insignificant. For it, you ask the sheriff to make the request, and Special Olympics provides the amount of insurance that you require for all community events or festivals of this type that are using public property. Typically what we do is we provide, or the fire department provides for, along with some assistance from some equipment from Public Works, for the cutting of the hole, the placement of some, what I would call borders and ground cover near the area that's utilized, and a staging area for this. Again, that's the work that we really do. This year, the plan for Special Olympics at this polar plunge and others is to have both an in-person and a virtual event. And so that's what's being planned here for March 13th. The resolution providing acceptance of the request is on page 83.
Questions? Brad?
So number one, I'm in favor of the event. Don't have any issues with that. But it was brought out in one section they want temporary bleachers for spectators. In another section, they're saying no spectators are going to be allowed. My opinion is if you bring the bleachers, the spectators will come. So I'd be in favor of this resolution, but I would wish to make it to ensure that we don't actually provide bleachers, because in the current environment, we shouldn't be doing anything that would encourage spectators to come. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, I'm certainly happy to have that discussion with the sheriff's office. They will be, along with many of the other events that you have going on, and they won't just provide it to us, but to Nicollet County itself, have a COVID plan in place. I'm not sure, Councilmember DeVos, that the bleachers will be used for many spectators. There are some areas that they're looking to have set up so that people that are kind of waiting in line to do the jump, they have a place to go, a place to sit, those types of things. But I can certainly clarify that with the sheriff.
Okay, because the report actually did say bleachers for spectators.
Yep.
I mean, it literally, that was in there, so.
Yep, no, I agree.
Any other questions, comments? Shannon?
Are we concerned about the ice this year, having been such a mild year, and we're probably past the coldest part of the year? Statistically speaking, I think we are. Any concerns about that?
If I can, I think Pete might still be with us. Right now, I don't believe that we are concerned about it. And certainly on March 13th, that will be a call that the sheriff's department makes at that time. They're in charge as to whether they're having the event or postponing the event for whatever reason it is, whether it would be ice or other issues. But Pete, we've got ice skating going on down there, so we're feeling good about it right now.
Yep, we've got about 10 good inches down there, so we'll keep an eye on it too. Work with Sheriff Lang and make sure that everything's proper on that line, but he'll be the one that makes that call, but it's okay right now.
Thanks. I hope it can happen. It's a terrific event, and the Special Olympics is an organization worth supporting. So,
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, if I could provide for a clarification, I know you have not had a motion yet.
Right.
But if you do have a motion and there's a want on the part of the city council to not provide bleachers, then that could be made as part of the motion, and just give me some latitude to include that as a part of the resolution if that's where you want to go.
So you're talking not bleachers, but we are, they specify something in here. I don't think, to me personally, I don't think it's going to make any difference for the people that come and watch this, whether there's bleachers or not. I'm not sure if this encourages that. I mean, if I'm going to go watch Steve jump in, I don't really care if there's bleachers there or not. I mean, it's just something that I'm going to do. So I don't see the need to change it, but that doesn't mean we can't.
Mr. Mayor, my plan is to talk with the sheriff about this issue, and then if he changes his mind and decides no bleachers, then we would not provide them. However, if you want to instruct staff
Right.
not to provide bleachers, that's perfectly cool. You might want to articulate that as a part of the resolution. Just say you're passing the resolution with that caveat, and I will modify the resolution when we get to the official book indicating that.
Well, it's up to, I guess it's up to the council what they want to do. I'm,
Shannon has her hand.
what was that?
Shannon. has
Oh,
her
I
hand up.
thought, okay. Shannon?
Hi. First of all, if Steve jumps in, I'll go and watch for sure. But but actually, I was going to say, having attended before, I actually feel like the bleachers would make it safer because I think there will be people, who bring a family member there and are dropping off, or people who need to wait. To me, it feels a little safer to be in those bleachers than to be in the situation where people are all standing, shoulder to shoulder, which has been my experience there before. And for that reason, I would not favor removing bleachers from the resolution personally.
Right. This is the, as in the resolution, this is the first year now with the COVID preparedness plan. So if they have that plan, to me, it doesn't make any difference if there's bleachers there or not at this point. But once again, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to read what the resolution is for, and if someone wants to change it, they can change it. The resolution authorizing use of Hallett's Pond for the 2021 Polar Plunge appears on page 83. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Ed 1, Carrie 2. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the utility easement authorization for the Pell property. And Russ?
Mayor Zeman, members of the City Council, as everybody's aware, and we've talked about it a number of times, on November 9th of 2020, you entered into the development agreement with St. Peter Investors LLC for the development of the multifamily apartment complex in North Traverse Green subdivision. The obligation that the city made in the development agreement was to extend the sanitary sewer main from where it ends currently in Clark Street at Warren Park in a westerly fashion across Nicollet Avenue to serve the property in question. The extension had been designed by Bolton and Mank, and there had been a 80-foot construction easement and a 30-foot permanent easement for the installation of the underground water main on the lands owned by Ben and Joanna Pell. The plan would be to have the underground sewer pipe extended. It would not surface or daylight upon any of the properties upon which it would cross. To that end, we had John Foster of Foster Appraisals complete appraisals of the easements on the city's behalf. And then we had engaged Dan Wilson of Henning Professional Services then to undertake the negotiation of the easements. We offered the appraised value of the easements, counter offers were made, and at this point, Mr. Wilson reports that we have come to a tentative agreement with Ben and Joanna Pell for the easement that would be required upon their property. To that end, the City Attorney Brandt has prepared 3 documents for your consideration. The first would be a wastewater utility easement. This would be the 30-foot easement in which to place the underground utility. It would extend 478.66 feet in an easterly direction, where it would terminate at the point where the Pell property would abut the Levon or Bonnie Ends property. There is also then for your consideration a temporary or a construction easement That would be 25 feet on each side of the 30-foot permanent easement for a total of an 80-foot construction easement. Bolton and Bank has indicated that that would be sufficient to provide for the construction and the installation. The temporary or the construction easement then would terminate on October 31 of 2021. Finally, there is a memorandum of understanding between the city and Ben and Joanna Pell. It does acknowledge that the easement is exclusively for a sanitary sewer system. You could not put a roadway within the easement. You could not install stormwater infrastructure or city water service infrastructure within that easement. It also acknowledges the method in which the land would be disturbed, and essentially the top part of the land would be removed and put into one spoils pile. The undersoil or subsoil then would be put into a separate spoils pile, and then as the site is reestablished, it would be undertaken in the reverse fashion, and the topsoil restored to allow it to be continued to be farmed. There are fees that are due. The permanent and the temporary easement would each have a fee of $1 apiece, and then the memorandum of understanding establishes an easement cost of $21,700 payable to the Pells for a total of $21,702. Mr. Mayor, I'd answer any questions that you or members of the City Council may have.
Okay. Questions for Russ? Brad?
So I'm glad to hear agreement was made with the Pells. How are things coming with the other property owner?
Yeah, the ends interests at this time have engaged their own appraisal of the property, and we believe that is underway. And we are not aware of what delivery date would be established. As you will recall, there is another action that's being considered by the City Council at your meeting on February 8th, and that would be the annexation of certain properties by ordinance. In the absence of successful negotiations with the ends at this time, we will continue to engage Mr. Wilson to have discussions with the ends. We'd anticipate that at such time as they would receive their appraisal, that perhaps those would really take off. But nonetheless, there is action scheduled on the February 8th meeting to annex the Pell, the ends, and a handful of other properties as you're allowed to by ordinance under statute.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Emily? Oh, I saw a hand go up, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was putting my hand down. My apologies.
All right. If there are no other questions, the resolution
I do have a
authorizing...
question, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Oh,
Came
sorry,
to-
Carrie has a question, sorry.
Russ, the handful of other properties you're talking about, is it related to the project?
Yeah, there are two properties that are owned by Nicollet County. There's a total of 7. So it's the Ben and Joanna Pell property, the Levon or Bonnie Ends property. There are 2 parcels that are Nicollet County. It's assumed they are former right-of-way. There is what we refer to as the Wilson farmland that now is controlled by Pell Inc. interest, which is Lee Sherry and Matt Brostrom. And then there is the Wilson Homestead property that is owned by Jim Wilson, as well as then we believe again another remnant part of right-of-way that is owned by Jim Wilson. So those are the 7 properties that would be subject to the future annexation action.
And those were on the map that we would have seen previously. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions? I see Ed.
Russ, why is the Wilson property in on it? Is it just because we're doing some other properties and it comes right into it? I was asked that question by the owner of the property.
Yeah, the Wilson property is the necessity to include that, Councilman Johnson, is that we're annexing the properties under a certain section of statute that allows you by ordinance to annex lands that are completely surrounded by the existing city limits. So if we only annexed the Ben and Joanna Pell property and Levon or Bonnie Ends property, it would not close that circuit, if you will, as the Pell Inc., Jim Wilson, and the Nicollet County properties would also need to be annexed to complete that loop, or again, to close that circuit. We cannot just annex a couple of the properties that are completely surrounded by the city limits. We need to have those and then the abutting or the contiguous properties also.
So,
And one more question, I'm sure I know the answer to this, but I was asked, so it's not going to affect the value of his property at all, or his tax?
Well, there will be certain tax adjustments as it is converted from the Traverse Township tax rate to the City of St. Peter levy. So we have made those calculations. What we are obligated to do is make a financial agreement with the township to reimburse them for their tax loss for the first period of time. And we have made offers to Traverse Township on your behalf to address those issues.
but value-wise, Ed, it should not change, but because they're in a different taxing district, that's what would change it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, to me, what you explained before, Russ, we're trying to be consistent with dealing with everyone in this group, not just pinpointing a couple of people. We're doing it for everyone. Any other questions or comments? Now, if the resolution authorizing execution of wastewater utility easement, temporary construction easement, and memorandum of understanding by and between the City of St. Peter and Ben and Joanna Pell appears on page 113. Is there a motion for approval?
Noel will move.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Shannon, 1, Carrie, 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Russ. Next up, we have the 2021 equipment purchase for a tractor. And Pete?
Mayor Zeman and City Council, the 2021 equipment certificate purchase is before you, and today we're looking at a tractor. This would be a Kubota 6060. It's basically a 60-horse Kubota tractor. What we're looking for is some flexibility in some of our mowing operations. This unit would replace a 2005 Toro Groundmaster, which is well beyond its years. Part of the purchase would also come from Arnold's Implement in Mankato in the amount of $42,125 for the new Kubota. And we're also asking that at this time you declare the 2005 Toro Groundmaster as surplus and allow us to dispose of that. Staff has looked at a variety of different pieces of equipment and have come up with this unit as one of the better flexible units that meet our operational needs. You can see the information there. There's a 2-year, $1,500 bumper-to-bumper warranty, and there's also a $2,000 warranty on the hydraulic system. So we're comfortable where we're at with this decision and going forward, and since it's an equipment certificate purchase, we're asking that the council approve the resolution on page 115, which authorizes the purchase and declares the extra unit as surplus.
All right. Questions for Pete? Brad?
Pete, just a clarification on the warranties, the 2-year $1,500 and the 3-year $2,000, does that mean it's $1,500 worth of coverage, or you're paying $1,500 for the warranty?
Paying for the warranty.
Okay.
And Mayor members, that's included in this $42,125 price tag.
Right.
Yep.
Basically, that's a deductible once we implement the warranty during that period. The warranty comes with the purchase, and so if something major goes wrong, it'll cost us $1,500 and then $2,000 for the hydraulics if we have an issue with it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? The resolution approving a 2020 equipment certificate purchase of the 2021 Kubota L6060 tractor, and with also authorizing the Toro Groundmaster to be declared as surplus, appears on page 115. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Steve Graham will second. Mr.
Ed
Mayor.
1, Steve 2. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Ruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grahams.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Pete. That concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports. Don't have anything, so going to move to you, Todd.
Mr. Mayor, members, I have one listed and one that I'd just like to provide a quick update for you as well. The first one is, as you know, under state law, we're required to provide information or report following any closed session. At your last meeting, we had a closed session. This related to property, what we call the old Creamery property, but is in the 100 block of North Front Street. You provided direction to the city administrator and the city attorney, which we have implemented or followed that direction. We just have not heard back from them yet. So when we do, there'll be more to report, but that's where we are right now. Mr. Mayor, the second one that I have relates to the fire station project and two pieces of legislation, or maybe technically one, but two changes to legislation related to the fire station. So as all of you may have seen already within your email boxes, we have sent the appropriate documentation to both the Senate and the House tax chairs requesting local option sales tax authority. What this does, if it is approved by the state legislature, would allow for a local vote in November of this year. The second one that we have requested relates to the exemption from sales tax for the materials of building a new fire station. So again, this is something that you've talked about on many occasions and that you worked through in the last legislative session, and because of COVID and lots of things, it didn't move. So we have submitted that documentation ahead of the deadline, and we have received confirmation back. I'm sorry, I don't remember if it's from the Senate tax chair or the House tax chair. I think House tax chair that they have received it. I'm sure they all have received it. We just haven't gotten confirmation back. But we're in good shape and exactly where we need to be at this point. So I wanted to provide that report for you and for the community so that they know that you can continue to work on this project.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, that's all that I have for reports for tonight.
All right. Next thing we have is the calling for a closed session. We have a resolution.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I had a quick report to make. Actually, Todd wanted me to let everyone know that I am attending the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Legislative Day of Action on Wednesday, and just really interested in hearing some of those reports from the president and some of our legislators. So I'll be doing that this Wednesday.
Yep. I wasn't ignoring you, Emily. We will be coming back into open session, and then I was going to do that before we adjourn to allow people to to voice their things. So, but that's okay. Good.
If I can, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor, just to articulate, generally, the council tradition have been is that if members are attending that or League of Minnesota Cities Conference, we share that with the other members, so we don't have like everyone going or everyone not going, so that we're making sure we're covering those bases. So, thank you, Emily.
But the first thing we will do, and then like I say, this is a little bit different tonight because we will be coming back into open session. And what we are going to do is once we hopefully approve the resolution for a closed session, because we are coming back to open session, we will give everybody, Tony and everybody else, Barb, that needs to come back, a 10-minute window. So after 10 minutes, we will go back to open session. Hopefully we will be ready. And if we're not ready, we will ask them to wait another 5 or 10 minutes, whatever we think it would be. So with that, on page 116, there's a resolution calling for a closed session, and this closed session is for union negotiations between the city and the International Union of Operating Engineers or the Utilities Department. Is there a motion for approval?
Carrie Johnson,
Oh, well.
so moves.
Okay, we've got Carrie 1, Shannon 2. Any questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. So what we will do, we will go into recess to the closed session. And the time right now is, I can't quite see it,
8:04.
8:04. So let's make it an even number, kind of. At 8:15, we will come back into open session and see how we're at that point. Okay, we are returned from our closed session. We are now back into open session. It is Monday, January 25th, 2021. It is 8:17 p.m. And the next item of business on new business is union utility negotiation contract. Todd.
Mayor and members, in front of you is a contract that's been signed off or agreed to by Local 70, the utilities group within the city of St. Peter. The contract has a number of provisions that are modifications from the previous year. It goes something like this: a one-year agreement, so it's from January 1st of 2021 through the end of the year. A general wage increase across the board of 2% for the year. In addition to that, there's a $1 per hour increase for electric linemen. There's also a modification to vacation accrual for employees that have 35 plus years of service with you. There's a letter of agreement related to health insurance and construction hours of work. And there's always a typo or something like that that we change within these contracts, and certainly the dates get changed. And so, Mr. Mayor, that's what is proposed as a part of this. Again, Local 70 has voted this contract already and is provided for approval. And there's a resolution right on your screen providing your approval and agreement to that contract with Local 70.
Okay. Questions? I don't see anyone. There we go. If not, the resolution is on a separate form handout that we have, but it is for entering into and I guess concluding union negotiations with between the city and the International Union of Operating Engineers Local 70, the Utilities Department. If no one has any questions, is there a motion to approve?
Carrie
Ed will
Johnson.
make a motion to approve.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Ed 1, Carrie 2. Now any questions? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. That concludes our new business. Next up, if anybody has anything to add, and Emily, I'm going to go back to you because I feel like kind of cut you short before with the changeover. So if you could tell us again what you're doing on Wednesday.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am attending the virtual Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Day of Legislative Action, and they have a list of speakers and presenters that morning talking about various things, the environment, housing. There were some interesting topics coming up on the agenda, so I'll be attending those on Wednesday morning.
Okay, great. Appreciate you doing that. Carrie.
I am also attending, and I failed to mention earlier that I am serving on the Economic Development Committee for Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. And, I was trying to be thoughtful about what was mentioned before, just with making sure that, we're really utilizing the membership. And so I threw my hat in the ring and was accepted. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks to both of you, and Emily again.
Yeah, on that note, I have inquired about being a part of their environmental committee. So I don't know what the process looks like, but I have interest in serving if that would work out.
Great. You guys go. Good job.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to share or add? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Ed will make a motion to adjourn.
Emily will second.
Ed 1, Emily 2. Any questions after the fact here? All in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned.